This week we have the expertise of Janelle Ellis, who's joining us. She's a transition liaison, transition resource services with Career and Transition Services in Fairfax County Public Schools in Fairfax, Virginia. She's also a private vocational evaluation practitioner in Maryland. Janelle has been associated with vocational evaluation for many years and has been practicing for over 30 years. The past 10 to 12 of those have included her work in blending her vocational evaluation practice with assistive technology, and she has actually been an expert in this area with Fairfax County Public Schools. Ms. Ellis has also held leadership roles on the National Vocational Evaluation and Work Adjustment Association, the Vocational Evaluation and Career Assessment Professionals Association, and has been a representative voice during early definitions and discussions around ONET. She's authored and presented in the field at state, regional, and national professional conferences for many years and a recognized voice in the profession. Please tell us a little bit about who you are and what your current employment situation is.
Well, my name is Janelle Ellis, and I have been in a few different roles over the years, and I am a certified vocational evaluator. I went through the George Washington University CVET program back in the late 80s, and I'm currently finishing up my EDS at GW as well. And I have worked as a vocational evaluator in different settings, in private nonprofit hospital, in a private nonprofit, or rather a private for-profit hospital, a private nonprofit habilitation program, and the school system. And I've also worked pretty extensively, about 10 years, with assistive technology as a resource teacher in the public schools, and I'm currently now in transition services in the public schools.
Tell us about the clientele that you serve.
Okay. My first job as a vocational evaluator was with a private nonprofit agency that served adults with developmental disabilities. It was right at the beginning, kind of the supported employment movement in the early 80s, and this was kind of like a sheltered workshop, but supported employment was really taking off, so we were very involved in that. The clients that I worked with came mostly from the Division of Rehab Services, so there was a wide range of disabilities, and they weren't affiliated with necessarily with the agency I worked for. And we did comprehensive evaluations, 2 to 4 weeks long, with each individual. Lots of work samples and psychometric tests and interview, and it was pretty extensive.
What are some of the tasks that you typically do in your assessments when you're providing a service?
I also recently, within the last couple of years, established a private practice. So even though I'm full-time in the school system, during the summers, I've been practicing vocational evaluation. I have a contract with the Division of Rehab Services in the state of Maryland. And, the process that I use is a pretty extensive initial interview. I feel like that's one of the most important parts of the whole assessment. And it could even take 45 minutes just to do the interview one-on-one. It's not a form that anyone fills out. It's a sitting down and talking and kind of expanding on questions and getting to know the person, especially because I usually have only about two fairly full days of assessment, but 2 days isn't a whole lot of time to get to know somebody, so I find the interview really helpful. Do a combination, depending on reading level and whatnot, of some psychometric tests, maybe some aptitude paper pencil kinds of tests that look at all the general aptitude areas, maybe computer aptitude tests, maybe some academic achievement kind of tests, but a lot of career exploration and some informal tools that generate some discussion and really try to get at the person, what their temperaments are, what they're really interested in, and really find it important to take information from a wide range of sources and resources, and assessments to get a picture, get a full picture. They never really rely on a quantifiable kind of result to make determinations about somebody's future. So, and I have some also some work samples that can support some of the other tests. So work samples that might have individuals do some data entry or some kind of more complicated diagram following in assembly or involving money and accounting and things like that to get a picture. So it's not just all paper pencil tests. Do a lot of transferable skills analysis with collecting information about the individual's work history and going over that with the person so that they can look at all the skills that they have and verify or not whether they actually use those on their past jobs, and if they feel comfortable enough applying those skills to a new kind of position, and that plays into the career exploration process a lot. As far as sharing the information with the individuals, I try to set aside time. It's not always easy if you have a shortened period of time to get a lot of the information sort of scored and in a format that's ready to convey to the person as to how they did. But I try to do that as much as possible so they have an idea of what it all means, everything that they did. I also try to elicit from the person what they got out of the process. I think that that's very important. If they learned anything new about themselves, and if they have any new ideas for directions that they would like to take, what they think their next steps might be, and what I think their next steps might be as well. I think it's really important to have extreme familiarity with the community in which you're working or where the individual is going to be working or where they live. And which brings up another point of transportation. So the vocational assessment is so much more, it's very holistic. You need to look at the geographic area where the person is, what the labor market is like there, what the transportation is like there, whether they have transportation, whether they have any family supports that can help provide transportation, which I think is becoming more and more of a trend in rehabilitation, or hopefully, at least as best practices in general, not just voc-eval, as to the person-centered planning approach that we're hearing a lot about. You really have to look holistically. You can't take just a vocational piece and a couple of tests and guide somebody towards some viable career goals that way. So that was one way, right after it was finished, just to kind of do maybe an exit interview and collect that information that I was just talking about and have a little dialogue with the person. The information is shared through a report with the referral source, which is usually, in my case anyway, the Division of Rehabilitation Services. I offer to come and have a post-evaluation meeting later, once the report is completed, if that's something that the counselor would like me to do to explain. But I think usually it's pretty clearly outlined in the report, and the counselor can usually then just follow up with the client. And my report's pretty clear in terms of short-term steps, and then mid-range steps, and then long-range steps. So that's helpful then for the counselor and the client, consumer, to sit down then and develop a plan when it's outlined that clearly. As far as some of the outcomes for the clients, I have not done a voc-eval in about a year, and so I have a whole box of reports that I've done and worked with people. But right now, where I am, I don't have a really crystal clear memory of some of the specific outcomes. I know in general that usually with adults there's an interest area. They've been doing some thinking already about different career paths, especially if it's a change of careers because of an injury or something like that. I do know that it does involve a lot of research on the evaluator's part to really go into a little more depth or help that individual go into a little more outcomes. I know I've had individuals looking into inspection jobs, going from something that was more heavy labor, or even just switching careers altogether. I've had recommended training areas and really had to differentiate between different computer occupations, for example, because a lot of times saying computer careers is just too general. So I know that I've gone into pretty great detail about different computer occupations and what would be involved in those and what kind of training. I've recommended support services and pre-employment kind of recommendations. I have recommended some areas just based on real strengths that maybe weren't identified before, looking at temperament and, like, say, extremely strong spatial skills combined with some interests in certain areas of computer design and graphics and whatnot, things like that. So there's just a wide variation of outcomes depending on the person. I think that the report writing is probably one of the biggest challenges because you do need to take information from a variety of sources and make sure that the information is clearly presented to whoever's going to be using it. And it's also one of the more laborious, time-consuming parts of the VocaVal process because it's fun to do the interacting with the consumers and the career guidance and exploration and the testing even and just that part of it is a lot of fun. But then you've got all this information, and I find that sometimes the reports, it's kind of a dilemma because you don't want to, you need some kind of format or template because you don't want to recreate the wheel every time you write a report, but yet you don't want them to be boilerplate and look the same. And I've seen many reports like that, and they just lose meaning. So if it's all check sheets and checklists of things and kind of canned paragraphs, and it's meaningless. It really is, and it's just not a useful tool. So they need to be individualized for each person to the highest degree possible. And I think that is a very time-consuming part. I found the most time-consuming parts of writing the report are the recommendations because they often involve a lot of research and you want to be clear. And coming up with the short, mid, and long-range goals takes time. But I think that part of the report is the most essential part. Some of the other reporting of results can be a little bit more boilerplate and generic, but not the recommendations. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge and the most time-consuming part of the process. But I would hate to see that part. I think there's a pressure by employers to go with shorter reports or see as many people as possible, which kind of forces the reporting, which is one of the most important key parts of the whole process, into something it's compromised then. So by those kind of constraints. So that's a dilemma that's faced everywhere. But I think there needs to be built-in time to do a decent report, and that does take. I mean, I've taken probably 12 hours just to write a report, if not more than that sometimes. And then some of them don't take that long. I mean, I've had other ones that have just taken a couple of hours or 4 hours, but they can take many, many hours sometimes. At this point, I do not have a follow-up system in place to evaluate the impact of the assessment services. I think that's always also been an area that's been difficult to do, but very much needed, and it's unfortunate that we don't have that because I think you need that kind of hard data to support what you do. I strongly believe that those that have received a quality vocational evaluation benefit a great deal over those that don't. And not having the data to back that up is a problem. I believe that the vocational evaluation services are extremely important in the whole rehabilitation process. I think that it's one of the most valuable services that someone can get in the whole process of going through the system for employment services. it's a struggle to kind of keep it recognized as a field with in a field of its own right. It is performed in one way or another by a lot of different professionals, is okay too, because there's different levels of assessment, but I think it's often not done well, unless it's done by a trained individual who really knows how to find the right tests, select the right tests, differentiate between different types of assessments and what kind of information you're getting at, how to convey that information to somebody, and all of those things is why there is a professional certification to do this, and I would like to see that continue, and I think it is extremely important, and that's my feeling on that. So.